In Japan, the junior high school basketball team stood out with players known as the Miracle Generation. The boys won several consecutive championships, but afterward, each went their separate ways to different high schools. The strangest and friendliest among them decides to join a new school to show that basketball is not just about being the best player. At the beginning of the school year at Siren Private School, some students are announcing sign-ups for the school's sports teams. Friends Kogane, Izuki, and Mito distribute basketball club flyers. Suddenly, a tall guy named Taiga Kagame arrives. He goes with Kogane to the sign-up table where a guy named Hyuga and a girl named Riko Eda are taking registrations. On the form, she sees that he studied junior high in the United States, the birthplace of basketball, but strangely, he didn't state a reason for joining on the form. They also pick up another registration form from someone named Tetsuya Kuroko, but Ida doesn't remember who that is. However, the form says he came from Taiko Junior High, and since he's a first-year student, they believe this student might be from the so-called Miracle Generation. Later on the court, Ida introduces herself as the team coach. She asks the newcomers to take off their shirts for a physical assessment. Ida has an incredible ability to analyze a person's statistics just by looking at their physical structure, knowing, for example, how many lateral jumps someone can do in 20 seconds. This is because her father worked as a fitness trainer and conducted assessments for client training programs. Through living with him, she learned to analyze like him. When it's Taiga's turn, she's impressed to see that he already has excellent abilities and still has a lot of potential. After that, she realizes that the so-called Kuroko is missing and thinks he didn't come for the assessment. However, the blue-haired guy soon appears, saying he was there all along, but no one had noticed him. She's also surprised by Tetsuya's statistics. While Ida is on the bus heading home, it is revealed that she was surprised because Kuroko has all below average skills and is almost at his limits, so it's impossible that he was a starter on the Taiko team. Meanwhile, on a court, Taiga practices alone when he notices Kuroko in the same place. Kagami finds it strange because he can normally distinguish strong players from weak ones just by their scent, but Tetsuya has no scent. So he challenges Kuroko to a one-on-one and Kuroko accepts because he also wanted that. They start and Kuroko shows little skill, barely able to keep possession because Taiga quickly takes the ball from him. After the match, Taiga comments that he's very bad and shouldn't even try to play basketball because he has no talent for it. However, Tetsuya says he already knew that Taiga was better than him but disagrees about the talent issue, concluding the conversation with, "I'm a shadow." The next day at school, the newcomers are put to play against the second-year students. At the start of the game, Taiga shows great performance, dunking several times and making incredible plays, while Kuroko struggles to play. Taiga was carrying the rookie team alone until Kogane, Izuki, and Hyuga gathered to defend against him, all three at once. This makes the game more challenging for the newcomers, and the veterans end up turning the tide. With the second-year team is winning 31-15, one of the rookies complains about being tired. Taiga argues with the guy, but Kuroko gives him a sneak knee from behind to wobble his legs, that fifth-grade prank. As the game resumes, Tetsuya asks the other student to pass the ball to him, and something remarkable happens. Without anyone seeing, a rookie farther ahead receives the ball and scores a basket. The next plays are equally peculiar. No one can see who is making these passes until Ida realizes that Kuroko is using his lack of presence to direct the plays without the other team noticing. He's practically a ghost. Ida has heard of someone like that from the Generation of Miracles, but didn't think it was true. The rookies managed to increase the score, reaching 36-37, and on the game-winning basket, Kuroko disappoints by hitting only the rim. However, Taiga steps in to finalize the score, ultimately securing the victory for the first year. After randomly meeting at a diner, Taiga and Kuroko walk down the street. Taiga inquires about the Generation of Miracles, and Tetsuya says that he wouldn't stand a chance against them. When Taiga declares he'll become the best player in Japan, Kuroko thinks it's impossible. Still, he explains that the stronger the light, the darker the shadow becomes, making the brilliance of the light even more evident. So Tetsuya decides to be a shadow of Taiga's light to help him become the best in Japan. The next day, excited to play against the Generation of Miracles, Kagami approaches Ida to join the official school club and discovers that Kuroko had the same idea. She mentions there's a reserve spot on the team so they can join. She hands him the registration form but warns that she'll only accept it on Monday at 8:40 am on the rooftop. On the day, Kuroko, Taiga, and 3 other students go to the rooftop to submit their forms. Ida proposes a challenge she did with the second-year students the previous year. Shout their goals for the year so the students below can hear. Those who fail have to come back naked and confess their love to the girl they like. Taiga is the first. He shouts that he will defeat the Generation of Miracles and become the best in Japan. The others make their promises, and when it's Kuroko's turn, he takes the megaphone because he can't speak loudly. However, before he begins, the school director appears and scolds Ida because she said she wouldn't do this again. Later, Kuroko and Taiga meet again at the same diner by chance. Taiga asks why he's playing basketball and why he didn't go to a renowned school like the other generation of Miracle starters. Kuroko replies that they were very good, but they had only one goal: to win. Only Tetsuya disagreed with that conduct because individually they were all very skilled but not a team, so to speak. When Taiga asks if Kuroko wants to defeat the generation of Miracles in his own way, he says yes and wants to join Kagami to make this team the best in Japan. Taiga then says he doesn't want to try this. He's sure they will become the best. On the next day, Kagami arrives in the classroom and sees other students gathered by the window. As he approaches, he notices that someone has written in the sand below, "We will be the best in Japan." Ida finds it interesting, while Kagami looks at Tetsuya, knowing it was him. Later in the locker room, Kogane finds a basketball magazine from the time when Kuroko was at Teiko, but there is nothing about him. Kuroko then reveals that they talked to him, but they must have forgotten to publish it. He also explains that he is different from the other 5 members, but at that moment, a newcomer enters the room saying that everything seems to be in order for them to train. He mentions that Ida was bouncing around and the others understand that if she's excited, it means the next opponent will be tough. During practice, Taiga demonstrates his speed, dribbles past another student before slamming the ball into the basket. After training, the students learn that they will play against Keijo High School, a nationally ranked team with a player from the generation of Miracles, Ryota Kais. By the way, Kais was already at Siren School and is surrounded by girls when he appears on the court because in addition to being an athlete, he has also become a model. Kais says he just came to greet Kuroko because they were best friends at Teiko, but Tetsuya says they were just colleagues. Taiga challenges Kais to a one-on-one and he accepts, playing in his formal clothes. They barely start and Ryota quickly scores a basket after dribbling past Kagami and dunking the ball just like he had done against the other student. After the quick match, Kais asks Kuroko to join him in the other club, but Kuroko refuses, saying he promised Taiga that they would defeat the generation of Miracles. The day of the game arrives, which will take place at Keijo High School, but upon arrival, the Siren team sees that they will only use half the court. Coach Takeuchi says the other half will be used for the students of that school to continue training because they have nothing to learn from watching this game. He also did not recognize Ida as the coach. He thought she was an assistant. Finally, the coach sees that Kais is in uniform, so he says he won't play. The other starters are enough, and if Kais participates, it won't be a friendly match. These actions by Takeuchi irritate the Siren students, but Kais says that if they do well, the coach might feel forced to put him in. After showing them where the locker room is, he says he looks forward to playing with them, so Kuroko responds that he won't have to wait long. As they step onto the court, the referee realizes that the Siren team is incomplete, but Tetsuya appears out of nowhere in front of him. Everyone notices that he has no presence, including the Keijo coach, who thinks he's not a big deal. From the bench, Ida realizes that the opponent's physique is much better than that of their team. The game begins and the Keijo team takes the ball, but out of nowhere, Kuroko surprises the opponent while stealing the ball. The other players are faster, but Tetsuya passes the ball backward to Taiga, who scores the basket next. However, he ends up tearing down the rim. They'd realized the screws were rusty, but it shouldn't have broken so easily. Without a basket on one side, they end up having to use the entire court, and this time, Kais will participate. Looking at Kais' statistics, Ida realizes he is truly a monster, and at that moment, the schoolgirls start waving at him. The other players mention that this happens often, and one of them even scolds him for waving back. The game continues, and the home team comes back strong, with Kais even making a dunk, making the girls cheer as they watch him in action. As the game progresses, Ida notices that both teams' offenses are very strong and the defenses, despite doing their best, are struggling to contain the attacks. On the court, the competition is tough for the Siren team, but when the ball reaches Taiga, he swiftly advances, accompanied by Kais. Even at high speed, Taiga manages to jump backward, launching a fadeaway. However, Ryota manages to defend and seizes the opportunity to counterattack, making the same move and scoring in the process. After this, Kuroko talks to Captain Hyuga to request a timeout because he can't keep up with the pace anymore, and they also need to calm down Taiga, who is exerting himself too much. This prompts Ryota to increase the pace, posing a problem for the Siren team. During the break, both teams go over their strategies and both Kais and Kuroko talk about each other, stating that the opponent has a weakness. Tetsuya reveals that he is losing effectiveness, while Kais asserts that after a while, Kuroko won't be able to use the distraction anymore. He explains that Kuroko can make people continuously look away from him like an illusion, but over time, the team will get used to his presence and Tetsuya will become more noticeable. Back in the game, the Keijo team manages to widen the point difference even more. At a moment when the ball goes out, Kais takes the opportunity to talk to Kagami. After saying that the difference between them is significant because everything Taiga does, he can return twofold, Kagami starts laughing with joy because it's been a while since someone said that to him, as he used to hear it a lot in the United States. Taiga also mentions that he discovered Kai's weakness since the guy is very good at copying plays. It's impossible to do that against someone he can't see due to the lack of presence, meaning his weakness is Kuroko. After a break, the second half begins. Keijo's defense is strong, but in an unexpected play, Taiga advances with Kai's. Instead of attempting another fadeaway, he passes the ball back to Kuroko, who takes advantage of Kai's opening to pass it back to Taiga, who finishes with a dunk. This cooperation changes the game, and in the next attack, after receiving the ball from Taiga, Kuroko passes to Hyuga, who scores a three-point shot, further reducing the point difference. The Keijo players acknowledge that the Siren captain is playing well, but they also worry about Kagami, especially now that, in addition to Tetsuya's invisible passes, Kagami has also started passing, completely changing the game. After that, Kuroko does something unexpected. He marks Ryota, even though he's not a match. However, the goal was to cooperate with Kagami, who marks him after passing by Tetsuya. But all of this was just for Kuroko to steal the ball while they locked down Kais for Izuki to score the next basket. After some more gameplay, Kais accidentally hits Kuroko. He seems a bit dizzy, despite saying he's fine. Without him to play with Kagami, the game is expected to get more difficult. Ida realizes there's no choice, and the Siren team has to substitute the boy, with Kogane taking his place. Izuki suggests that Taiga should stay on defense and let Hyuga attack since he rarely misses a shot. Indeed, with Kogane and Mito's marking, Hyuga scores the next basket for the team. The game continues fiercely, but as the fourth quarter arrives, Siren is still a few points behind. Suddenly, Kuroko gets up to continue playing. Ida allows it, albeit reluctantly, but they come back strong, even tying the game at 82-82. However, before turning the game around, Ryota starts to anticipate Tetsuya's passes better and disrupts some plays with Taiga, so the game becomes balanced again. As they approach the end of the match tied at 98-98, Kuroko talks to Taiga, mentioning that there's one more move that Kais can't copy. It's simple, but will only work once. When they advance together and reach Kais, Taiga passes to Kuroko. Kais can't believe he's going to take the shot because Kuroko is only good at passing. However, he shoots, and then Taiga jumps to finish with an alley-oop. Ryota also jumps to try to block, but Taiga keeps going up to complete the dunk, following Tetsuya's strategy to score at the last moment so Kais can't copy the play. Finally, Siren wins, and Kais ends up crying, experiencing his first defeat. Afterward, the teams exchange greetings and farewells. After the Siren students have eaten, Kais finds Kuroko and invites him to talk. In a distant square from the team, Tetsuya answers Kai's questions about his goals and motivations. He reveals that he was no longer enjoying Taiko's ways and was starting to hate basketball, but became happy when he met Taiga Kagami because he truly loves the sport. Taiga, who is looking for Kuroko, finds them and overhears part of the conversation. Kais mentions that one day Tetsuya and Taiga will separate because he is developing and will soon become as good as the other generation of Miracle's members, distancing himself from basketball like the others. Kagami interrupts the conversation, but before arguing about what he heard, they notice some bullies on the adjacent street court. The bullies are bothering the boys who were playing until now and challenge them to a game. When the boys perform well, the bullies start playing 5 against 3. After the boys complain, the bullies become more violent, but Kuroko interrupts, saying that it's wrong. The guys agree to settle it in another basketball game. Taiga and Kais join Tetsuya, making it 3 against the 5 bullies. Obviously, the trio is far superior and easily wins. After that, Taiga questions why Kuroko got involved, and he says he just wanted to tell the guys that it was wrong. Ryota is happy to have finally played alongside Kuroko and leaves. The other two talk about what Kais said earlier, and Kagami assures Tetsuya that he doesn't need to worry. When they meet the rest of the team, the coach punishes Kuroko with a wrestling move for disappearing without notice. The next day, Hyuga gathers the team to talk about the inter-high preliminaries. He explains that the Tokyo schools are divided into 4 blocks, and the winners of each block enter the championship league. From that league, the top 3 schools qualify for the inter-high. They have 3 weeks before the first game of the preliminaries. Hyuga also mentions that the strongest school in her block is Shutoku, which also has a member of the Generation of Miracles. However, they will only face this school in the block finals. They use the weeks to train hard until the day finally comes for the first game against Shinkyo High School. There they encounter the player Papambe Siki, an exchange student from Senegal who stands at 2 meters tall. The guy calls Kuroko a kid for being short and says he can't believe Keijo High School lost to this team. The teams gear up for the match, and Shinkyo's team already takes the lead. Siki, or Dad as Seirin College folks nicknamed him, is so tall that even Taiga can't block his shots. And Dad, in turn, becomes a defensive barrier. After a while in the game, Siki starts losing accuracy and missing some shots. Then Ida explains that after watching the opposing team's game, she trained Taiga and Mitov's defensive technique, accustomed to marking taller opponents. It's an individual marking that makes the opponent uncomfortable without a good position to make a shot. As a result, Tetsuya also starts getting involved in plays, appearing without Dad, noticing to assist in the team's passes. In the second half, Seirin plays without Kuroko because of his time limit, and it's good to save him. But even without the boy, they maintain a good performance, still holding the lead. Kagami starts making even more effort and can now jump higher, thus preventing Siki's attacks. However, Ida feels like he might be overdoing it. In the fourth quarter, the Shinkyo team starts scoring more points and getting closer to the opponent's score. So Ida puts Tetsuya back in the game for the last 5 minutes, and his passes make all the difference. The game concludes with Seirin College winning 79-67. After that, they continue playing well and win the next 2 games without much difficulty, not even needing Kuroko. Until the 4th game of the eliminations, the rival team is confident, but Taiga recognizes them as the bullies they faced before. When the guys realize they'll face Taiga and Kuroko again, they get scared, and Seirin College crushes the opponents with a score of 108-41, reaching the quarterfinals of Block A. Despite their success, Yuga warns that in the last 10 years, only 3 schools consistently represent Tokyo in the Inter-High: Shutoku from the east, Senshinkan from the west, and Seiho from the north. These schools are known as the 3 Kings of Tokyo, and now Shutoku, which they'll probably face if they reach the finals of the eliminations, also has Shintaro Madarima, a player from the Generation of Miracles. Although Seirin reached the championship league the previous year, they had no chance against the finalists. At the moment, they are spectators in Shutoku's game. Teika stands up to greet the guys, but Madarima pretends not to understand, so he writes his own name on the guy's hand so he won't forget. Madarima continues with much disdain because Seirin College lost to the 3 Great Kings, taking triple the opponent's score, and they'll probably lose to Shutoku in the final this year. However, Kuroko appears out of nowhere and says they can't predict based on past results. They'll only know the winner when they play. The match is between Shutoku and Kinka College. Shutoku already starts with an absurd advantage, opening a 30-point lead in the first half. When Madarima comes into action, he starts making very long shots, not even caring about the direction of the ball. He hits every shot. Even Tetsuya says he's never seen him miss. The game ends and Shutoku wins 153-21. After watching this game, the Seirin club heads to the next game that will still take place on the same day, being their second game of the day. Ida explains that this will also happen on the last day of the game, where they'll have the semifinal and final of the block on the same day. When Kagami looks at the schedule, he realizes the other 2 Great Kings of Tokyo are also in the same block as them, and they'll probably face Seiho College in the semifinal and Shutoku in the final. In other words, 2 very difficult games on the same day, which makes the players a bit scared, but Taiga and Kuroko are excited. After advancing to the semifinal, the day of the difficult games arrives and the Seirin team is a bit tense. Ida has an idea and says she will kiss each of them on the cheek if they win, but that doesn't excite the team, so she starts shouting to motivate them. Finally, Yuga makes a speech saying they lost to Seiho College the previous year, but have improved now and have a good chance of winning. Unfortunately, the Seiho team starts the game very well, leading 12-0 within a few minutes of play. Taiga has difficulty getting past Sugawa's defense, a newcomer to the team, and that's precisely where the opponents excel in individual defense. Not even Kuroko's passes are helping in this game because the marking is so good that he has no one to pass the ball to. Things start to change when Kagami manages to get past Sugawa's defense for the first time and finally scores the first basket for the Seirin team. After a while, Izuki makes a pass that seems lost, but Tetsuya makes a difference, appearing out of nowhere to pass the ball to Mito, who also scores a basket. With other good plays, Seirin manages to tie the game while penetrating Seiho's defense more easily. In the second half, they finally turn the game around, mainly using the combined plays of Kuroko and Taiga to continue scoring baskets. Unfortunately, Taiga is getting very tired with the marking and ends up making some mistakes under all this pressure, earning 4 fouls in the game. If he gets one more, he'll have to leave the game. Ada makes the substitution and Hyuga explains that they already plan to take out Kagami and Tetsuya after the first half because they need to be saved for the next game against Shutoku, which will happen immediately if they win against Seiho College. Taiga insists that he can play both matches, but Kuroko advises accepting the decision, trusting the seniors. Without the two rookies, the team continues to perform well, employing good strategies against Siho's defense. However, Kogane's accuracy is average and he ends up missing some shots. The game reaches the fourth quarter still well balanced, but Siren is trailing by 6 points. In a desperate attempt to get the ball, Kogane stumbles and falls, lightly hitting his head. He needs to be substituted. Taiga wants to return to play, but they want him to rest, especially since he already has 4 fouls. Thus, Hyuga puts Kuroko back in to replace Kogane. The game resumes and Kuroko's presence, or rather lack of presence, makes a significant difference. The veterans also step up. The match is challenging, but as the last quarter is about to end, Siren turns the game around, now leading 70-69. However, to their dismay, Siho's team captain scores another basket. In the final seconds, they maintain individual marking, still intending to score another basket. With Mito's help, Izuki manages to pass through the defense and sends the ball to Kuroko, who is closely marked by Tsugawa. However, Kuroko makes a move to confuse him and then passes the ball to Captain Hyuga, who finishes with a long-range shot, securing the winning basket. Siren wins 73-71. Tsugawa struggles to accept the defeat, but the captain acknowledges that Siren is the stronger team. Finally, the boy asks Kuroko's name and says he won't forget him. Later that day, when Kogane and Kuroko go to the bathroom, they encounter Takao, a player from Shotoku High School, their next opponent. Kogane realizes that Takao noticed Tetsuya's presence when he approached. Later in the same day, the teams prepare for the match. Midorima treats Kagami with disdain, but Kagami is unfazed, only stating that he is frustrated and angry, using these feelings as energy to defeat Midorima. When the game starts, instead of focusing on defense, Ada advises attacking with everything because they need to dominate in the first half. Kuroko again makes a pass to Taiga for an alley-oop, but surprisingly, Midorima manages to block the finish. On the counterattack, Midorima makes a distant shot similar to the one in the previous game and walks away unconcerned with the ball. At this moment, Kuroko tells Taiga to keep running. As expected, Midorima's shot scores a 3-point basket, but immediately after, Kuroko takes advantage of Midorima's lack of concern to make an impressive pass, throwing the ball forcefully to the other side of the court, where Taiga has already reached and scores the first basket for Siren. In the next play, Midorima notices Tetsuya returning and hesitates to make the same shot. Instead, he passes the ball. Shotoku's coach realizes that Kuroko's passes are a problem, preventing Midorima's shots. The game remains balanced, with baskets being scored on both sides. After observing the game a bit more, Shotoku's coach instructs Takao to mark Kuroko, and it indeed makes a difference. Takao starts interfering with plays, preventing the ball from reaching Tetsuya and even blocking his passes. Izuki notices that Takao has a sharper gaze, allowing a broad view of the environment, and that he doesn't lose sight of Kuroko. Takao continues to block Kuroko's plays. To make matters worse, Midorima decides to make a shot from midcourt, so that if Tetsuya tries the same strategy, they won't be too far away, and even if they succeed, Taiga's dunks are worth only 2 points, while Midorima's shots are worth 3. However, Taiga shows that he can also shoot from beyond the 3-point line, and even if the ball doesn't go in, he manages to run and dunk, creating a kind of one-man alley-oop. Midorima, in turn, makes another impressive play, shooting the ball from the opposite free throw line to score, demonstrating his full court range. The first half ends with Shotoku leading 19-13. In the second half, they remain strong, with Takao continuing to thwart Kuroko's strategies and Midorima continuing to score several consecutive baskets. Thus, the Shotoku team manages to increase the lead in the score. In the third quarter, with Kuroko on the bench, Takao takes advantage to make his plays, stealing the ball in a way similar to Tetsuya. When Midorima is about to make the next shot, Taiga jumps to block and gets close, but Midorima manages to make the shot anyway. Siren retaliates with a basket from Kogane. And in Midorima's next shot, Kagami tries again to intercept, and this time he even touches the ball, slightly altering its trajectory. It causes the ball to hit the rim for the first time in a Midorima shot, but it slides in and scores. Kuga also scores a basket, but Takao is still confident in Midorima. Taiga stops to block him, but Takao appears to block Taiga. In the third attempt after passing Takao's block, Kagami once again lightly touches the ball after Midorima's shot, and this time the deflection makes the ball hit only the rim and bounce back. However, another Shotoku player appears and finishes with a dunk. After that, Taiga finally times Midorima's shot better and manages to palm the ball at the moment of the shot. Then Mizuki grabs the ball, taking advantage of Midorima's only problem, the fact that making long-range shots puts the ball closer to the opponent's basket, so Izuki finishes without anyone to defend. The game seems to be improving for Saren, but when Kagami tries a new block against Midorima, he can't jump. Spectators from other schools notice that Taiga and the other Saren players are running out of energy. Taiga continues to try his best, but it's in vain. At the break after the third quarter, the other players criticize Kagami for being too hot-headed and trying to score alone at any moment, even when she passed. He responds that passing wouldn't help because only he can compete with the other team at the moment and that they don't need to play as a team right now. Upon hearing this, Kuroko lands a punch on him and scolds him for thinking he can play basketball alone. When Taiga says it's pointless to play as a team if they're going to lose, Tetsuya questions the value of winning alone if no one will be happy. Kagami returns the punch, stating that talking nicely won't matter if they don't win. Kuroko then questions the definition of victory, believing that if you're not happy at the end of the game, regardless of the score, it's not a victory. The other players agree they don't want to lose, but Taiga shouldn't play alone. Finally, he apologizes to Tetsuya and expresses a desire to be happy when they win. Although they are still behind on the scoreboard, Tetsuya claims he can do something. He manages to make a pass, stating he can take it to another level. When asked why he didn't say this earlier, Kuroko explains that few could catch that pass, but Taiga might even when tired. However, he won't be able to pass only to Taiga for the rest of the game. Izuki says he will try to keep up, and they prepare to go back. At this moment, Taiga also apologizes to Captain Hyuga for his earlier words. In the beginning of the final quarter, Kagami changes his behavior and makes an impressive pass that leads to a basket by Mitobe. Despite low energy, he jumps to block Midorima's shot. A flashback reveals Ada asking how many times he can still jump like that. Although Kagami claims he can jump as much as he wants, Ida calculates he can only do it twice more. She instructs him to save one jump for a decisive moment and use the first to block Midorima's initial shot. Taiga manages to block the shot, and on the bench, Ida explains to the other players that it's a bluff. As long as Midorima believes Taiga can keep jumping, he will reduce his shooting attempts. Meanwhile, Kuroko is being marked by Takao, and Izuki realizes Tetsuya's strategy isn't just diverting attention. Takao's sharp vision means Kuroko must make himself more noticeable on purpose to narrow Takao's field of vision and finally disappear. Afterward, Kuroko makes the mentioned pass, a powerful move to propel the ball and accelerate it without changing direction. Taiga receives the pass and takes advantage to score, even using his last jump to make a dunk. He just doesn't want to miss the chance to dominate the game. Kuroko's passes remain effective now that Takao can no longer interfere. When Saren reduces the score difference to 2 points, Shutoku calls a timeout. Kuroko takes the opportunity to talk to Midorima about his arguments regarding shooting back in elementary school. He argues that despite Midorima scoring 3 points with a shot, a morale-boosting dunk is more valuable than points on the scoreboard. The Shutoku coach tells them to focus on Midorima's shots because he realizes the other team is bluffing and Kagami is already exhausted. Still, when they pass to Midorima, Tetsuya appears to block the pass and enable a counterattack. This was also Ida's strategy. Since the opponents know they were bluffing, they will focus on Midorima's shots again, allowing Saren to predict exactly who will receive the pass. With seconds left in the game, Saren is still trailing by 2 points and would need a 3-point basket to win. However, an opponent starts marking Hyuga, knowing he would be Saren's best chance. At this moment, Hyuga swaps positions with Taiga, runs to receive the ball from Izuki, and makes a shot from midcourt, bringing the score to 82-81. Nevertheless, Shutoku still wants to win and initiates a quick counterattack. When the ball reaches Midorima and he prepares to shoot, Taiga uses his last strength to make one more jump. However, the opponent deceives him, saying he believed in his potential, and instead of shooting, he lowers the ball, making Taiga jump in vain. At this moment, Kuroko appears, saying he also believed in Taiga, but also believed that Midorima would do exactly that. He steals the ball and prevents the final counterattack, securing Saren's victory. After the game, Midorima receives a call from someone named Aomi, revealing that this guy will play against Saren in the league. After the victory, the Saren team goes to a restaurant. There, Kuroko and Kagami end up sitting with Kais, who is also watching the game. Midorima arrives and informs them that another player from the Generation of Miracles is in Tokyo, named Daiki Aomin, and he plays a similar style to Taiga. Tetsuya confirms that he is very good, but doesn't like his style of basketball. When the players leave the restaurant, Kuroko finds a puppy on the street. Ida falls in love with the dog, and the boys want to name him Tetsuya too because the dog's eyes resemble Kuroko's. However, Kagami reveals that he doesn't get along well with dogs. They decide to keep him anyway. Sometime later, during a pool training session, a beautiful girl with pink hair named Momoe appears. She claims to be Kuroko's girlfriend, but he denies it. It's revealed that Momoe is studying at the same school as Aomin, but she wanted to attend the same school as Kuroko. However, she couldn't leave Almin alone. Taiga goes after training and realizes he still has trouble jumping, feeling pain in his leg. A guy approaches and challenges him to a test match, introducing himself as Daiki Almin, saying he's looking for something that doesn't exist, a player better than him. Kagami acknowledges that Almin is as irritating as the other guys from the generation of miracles he has faced. Meanwhile, Momoi talks to Kuroko and mentions that she watched a video of their match against Shotoku. She comments that Kagami plays similarly to how Almin used to play in the past. At this moment, it is revealed that Tetsuya had great synergy with Almin. They complemented each other well in the court, just like he does with Taiga now. Momoi then reveals that without Kuroko, Almin started playing alone, separate from the team. She thought that if he lost, he would change, but he simply doesn't lose. Kuroko emphasizes that Almin will change if someone stops him, and he promises to defeat him because he won't be playing alone. On the other hand, Kagami didn't perform well against Almin, who arrogantly talks about Kuroko being a shadow, stating that the stronger the light, the stronger the shadow. This means that Tetsuya's skills are even better when paired with a stronger partner. Almin concludes by saying that Taiga's light is not that strong. Later, Kuroko tells Taiga how Almin became so good at basketball that he lost interest in playing unless faced with a challenge. This influenced the other 4 members of the Generation of Miracles to change as well. Taiga mentions how arrogant they are, especially Almin, so he agrees with Kuroko that they will bring Almin down and make him humble, no pun intended. The first day of the final league arrives and Almin is late because he overslept. He informs through the phone that he will miss the first half of the games, but the remaining time is enough to defeat Siren High School. In a locker room, Ada scolds Kogane for suggesting that if they lose to a strong team but win against the other 2, they can still qualify for the Inter-High. She emphasizes that they should not lose any games. When they reach the court, Kagami notices Almin's absence. His teammates call him selfish for always being late and claim they are nothing compared to him. Izuki asks if Taiga has lost motivation, but he shows that he is still eager to face the opponents, especially Almin. With Almin absent, Tetsuya tells the team to focus and score as much as possible from the beginning, as there's no use worrying about someone who hasn't arrived yet. The match begins and the Tuo High School team shows that even without Almin, they are still good. They admit they are nothing compared to Almin, but they quickly take the lead and score a 3-point basket. They continue to dominate the game, and Izuki realizes that the opponents play individually, relying only on their own skills. This is the Tuo team's style. However, the Siren players demonstrate that by playing as a united team, they can counter with their own style. Meanwhile, Kais and Midorima watch the game and comment that Momoi is also with the Tuo High School team, which could be a problem for the opponents. When Taiga attempts his solo alley-oop play, the opponents prevent him from advancing to finish the play, somehow knowing that he lacks precision for a 3-point basket. Ida comments that Momoi must have researched them, as she is an expert at gathering information. Thus, the Tuo team effectively counters Siren's plays. Nevertheless, Ada remains undeterred, believing that humans can evolve and improve. Besides, they can still make unpredictable plays like Kuroko's sudden appearances that can help create new strategies. In the second half, Ada substitutes Kagami with Kogane because she notices that his legs haven't fully recovered. Even though he insists he's fine, she insists on bandaging him before he can return to the game. He returns to the court shortly after, but Almin has just arrived and is about to join the game. On the court, Almin displays his skill, effortlessly passing Kagami, dribbling past Hyuga, and heading for a dunk. However, Taiga manages to reach him and block the shot. On the counterattack, Izuki faces tough defense but passes to Kuroko, who speeds up the ball to Taiga already in position. To their surprise, Almin is equally fast and blocks Taiga's dunk in the same manner. The second half ends still balanced, and even Almin acknowledges that the Siren team is not bad. However, during the break, he tells another player that he is not playing seriously because he's tired but will perform better in the next half. During the break, Ada decides to take out Kuroko and save him for the fourth quarter. Playing without him, especially against Almin, will be challenging, but the coach believes it's better than not being able to rely on him at the end. In the third quarter, Almin demonstrates why he is considered the best of the generation of miracles. He is incredibly fast and skillful, and Kagami compares his movements to street basketball in the United States. While watching the game, Midorima reflects on basketball having different tactics and movements, but effective techniques stand out and get refined. However, this leaves the game with limited options and becomes predictable. But someone like Daiki Almin doesn't follow these known tactics. His style is very unique, making it impossible for anyone to predict. Meanwhile, Momoi reminisces about her childhood with Almin. He played street basketball even against adults and always excelled with his unstoppable playing style. On the court, he continues to impress, making plays that even deceive Hyuga because of their irregularity. In the next shot, Kagami jumps even higher than him, but Aomine manages to perform a fadeaway and keep scoring. Not even Taiga's highest jumps are enough to stop Aomine. He is truly unbeatable. At one point, he approaches Tetsuya and challenges him to play. Aida sees that they don't have many options as they are losing by a 20-point difference. The boy really makes a difference in the team, and he has to. Come on, he's the protagonist. The first time he touches the ball, he makes an incredible long-distance pass to Taiga, who knows that Aomine will reach him and passes the ball to Hyuga, who finishes with a 3-point basket. With Kuroko's help, they continue to score and reduce the point difference. The problem is that it was Aomine who intercepted most of Kuroko's passes at Teiko School, so he can predict some moves and use that to counterattack. With that, Tuo High School widens the gap on the scoreboard, and to make matters worse, Aida notices a problem and substitutes Kagami again because to avoid straining the injured leg, he ended up putting too much load on the other leg. This way, he won't be able to continue playing or participate in the upcoming final league matches. Without Taiga, the game becomes even more challenging for the Seirin team. The players are reaching their limits. Aomine tells Tetsuya that his team has already won because Kuroko is no longer as effective and is without the team's light. Besides, there's a 40-point difference, and the game is coming to an end. However, the boy doesn't let himself be shaken by these comments because the game is not over yet. This boosts the rest of the team's spirits a bit. Nevertheless, the score difference only increases and Seirin High School is crushed by the opposing team until the end of the match. Everyone is devastated by the result, and Kagami also loses hope while telling Tetsuya that this might be their limit, so they may not be able to win even by joining forces. In the following games, unable to use Kagami and with Kuroko losing performance, they are crushed by the other two teams and are then eliminated from the Intercollegiate League. Despite being demotivated with basketball, they continue training, except for Kagami, who is sidelined. Aida then gathers the team to talk about the next chance to compete, which is the Winter Cup, the last competition of the year. As the difficulty is on the same level as the Intercollegiate, they question if they have any chance. Aida informs them that a guy named Teppei is coming back. The veterans say he was the best player on the team. Later, while Kuroko trains alone, Teppei Kyoshi appears and introduces himself. He says he created the Seirin High School basketball club. During their conversation, he comments on basketball having many all-around players who score points and make good passes, but Kuroko specializes only in passes and does it very well. However, he might be taking it too far. The next day, both Kagami and Kyoshi show up to play. Kyoshi has been hospitalized after surgery, so he didn't appear earlier. Upon meeting Taiga, Kyoshi challenges him to a one-on-one with the entry as a starter in the next game at stake. Kagami accepts him from the start. He realizes that Kyoshi is very fast even though he is taller. However, Kagami performs well and ends up winning with a slam dunk, earning the right to start in the next game. After Taiga leaves, Aida scolds Kyoshi. Kyoshi notices that he wasn't even wearing basketball shoes and accuses him of losing on purpose. After a while, they go for a friendly match in which, at Kyoshi's request, Aida only puts the first-year rookies to play, including Tetsuya and Kagami. At the beginning of the game, Taiga tells Kuroko not to pass to him. The game goes on, and Kagami performs well. Kuroko also makes good passes to the other rookie players. Seirin's team wins, but with a small point difference. Later, at a diner, Aida questions Kyoshi's goal with this rookie game, and he explains that he just wanted Tetsuya to know the limits of his own basketball. He mentions that Kuroko's strength lies in using the environment but depends on other players, and that is his weakness. So to improve, Kuroko will have to abandon this style and find a new basketball for himself. After a conversation with Hyuga, Tetsuya goes to Kagami. They play a bit and talk. Taiga asks why he chose him as the light to play at Seirin. Kuroko explains that he didn't exactly choose him. When he studied at Teiko School, he noticed that the other members of the Generation of Miracles were drifting apart as they discovered their own talents and stopped trusting Tetsuya. So he could have chosen anyone because he just wanted to surpass the Generation of Miracles. But Taiga is different. He believed in Kuroko, and when he said they wouldn't win against a strong opponent even if they united, he meant they needed to strengthen individually to be able to strengthen each other in the games. Tetsuya finishes by saying that he wants, along with Kagami and the other players, to make this team the best in Japan. Taiga corrects him again, saying that they don't want to become the best, they are going to become the best. When the holidays arrive, the team is taken to train on the beach, with the aim of making mobility more difficult so that the players exert even more effort in training. Later, they train in the gym, and everyone realizes that the movements have become much easier, the most impressive being Kagami making a basket without a dunk. The next day at the inn, while Kuroko and Taiga brush their teeth, Midorima and Takao appear, causing some confusion. It turns out that both schools chose the same place to train. Therefore, the training in the gym will be done with matches between the two schools. While the other players train, Ada sends Kagami to buy drinks for everyone but tells him to run because the convenience store is 500 meters away. She also mentions that it might be heavy, so he can bring one at a time. In the game, Kuroko is still trying to find his own style, and Midorima says he's making terrible plays. However, he explains that he's just trying to improve. The coach of Shotoku High School talks to another player who saw Taiga running outside in the sand and mentions that it must have been Ada's idea as training to strengthen his skills. The coach also talks about Teppei being the player they should fear. At night, Kagami arrives with all the drinks and hands them to Ida, but he knows it's not just for drinking. Ida notices that he bought drinks not only for the Siren team but also for Shotoku, which means he ran all day, impressive because it went far beyond the proposed training. Nights later, Kagami is training in a parking lot when Ada finds him. Taiga says he spent the whole training just running in the sand, and when he returned to the court, the games were already over. He asks why, and Ada tells him to jump. When he does, it's shown that he jumped very high. Ida tells him to try again, but this time jumping with the other leg. Meanwhile, at the inn, Hyuga and Teppei comment on Kagami's jumps seeming inconsistent. Teppei mentions that he dunks with his right hand, so he jumps with his left leg, but his highest jumps are with the other leg. So when Kagami does what Ida asked, he almost touches the top but ends up falling. Ida concludes that his biggest weapon is the jump, but he can still develop this skill even more. Sometime later, the Siren team goes to watch a quarterfinal game in the Inter-High between Keijo Ryota Kai's school and Tuo Daiki Aomin's school. Taiga asks who Tetsuya thinks will lose, and he replies that it's hard to tell. Both are good, played a lot one-on-one, but Kais has never beaten Aomin before. Meanwhile, in the locker room, Momoi tries to contact Aomin. The guy is late again. The other players comment that they don't need him, and that he hardly plays with them because he's always missing and late, but the coach thinks they will really need Aomin in this game. At that moment, he arrives, saying he couldn't lose this game because the opponent is Kais, and he's one of the few he can play seriously against. The game begins, and the Kaijo team secures the first possession. Kais receives the ball and manages to get past Aomin, but he prevents the model from advancing, so the Tuo team takes advantage to counterattack. In a few seconds, they open the score with a 3-point basket. Right after Kais imitates the throw he just saw, but Aomin manages to deflect the ball, preventing the basket from being scored. However, this time, the Tuo school doesn't counterattack in time because another Keijo player steals the ball and takes the opportunity to shoot, tying the game in a few seconds. Aomin starts provoking Kais, asking if he's resorting to teamwork because he can't play alone, and even compares him to Kuroko. Kais replies that he learned from Tetsuya about making the team win, but what he wants now is to beat Aomin, no matter how childish that may seem. After that, Aomin does some extremely fast hand exchanges to get past Kais, but he still catches up. The guy tries an unorthodox shot, but Kais jumps really high and manages to block the shot, surprising everyone around. The Tuo coach asks if Momoi gave Kais's data to Aomin, and she says he refused, but she gave it to the other 4 players. The Keijo team finishes the first half with a 5-point advantage. Everyone acknowledges that Kais is stronger than ever, but he believes it will be a tough match if it continues like this. Kuroko comments that Aomin is playing seriously but will improve even more during the game. In the second half, the Tuo team starts calm and already scores the first points. The opponents try to retaliate, but Aomin's team marks the guys strongly and keeps the pressure on the game. At the end of the second half, the Keijo team continues to struggle, especially in stopping Aomin, and the Tuo team manages to turn the game around. Kais realizes that he can't copy Aomin's style and remembers that it was Aomin who inspired him to play basketball, but he knows why he can't copy him. The truth is, if he continues to be inspired by him, he will never be able to surpass him. After a basket in the last moment, the second half ends 43-34 for Tuo Academy. During a break, Momoi warns that Ryota seems to be trying to copy Aomin, not just a technique, but the guy's entire style. One of the players asks the coach to take him out of the game to prevent this, but Aomin is confident that he won't be copied, and even if it happens, it won't change the result. So he repeats that the only one who can defeat him is himself. Outside, Kuroko meets Ryota and explains that Siren was in training and everyone went to watch the game. Kais asks Tetsuya who he thinks will win between him and Aomin, but he replies that it's impossible to know the result until someone gives up, and he thinks neither of them will give up, so any result is possible. Kais says he will do his best, and Kuroko is impressed that he doesn't claim he will win. Then Ryota says he doesn't even know if he can. In the third quarter, the Keijo team comes back strong, especially Kais, who already shows some techniques of Aomin that he managed to incorporate and ends up receiving some fouls when other players try to stop him. Aida realizes that Ryota still doesn't have the complete style, so he only uses it one-on-one against other players, not Aomin himself. Suddenly, Aomin scores a basket that no one can see how the ball was thrown. He tells Kais that he won't wait for him to get ready. Even so, the Kaijo school doesn't lose focus, and Ryota's teammates manage to press and still try to reduce the difference in the score. Additionally, they still manage to defend against the opponent's counterattacks. When the ball returns to Ryota, he finally confronts Aomin, showcasing an impressive performance by using the opponent's own style to penetrate his defense. To prevent the basket, Aomin quickly advances towards Kais but ends up committing a foul. Ryota throws the ball from behind and scores the basket nonetheless. The points count, and he even gets a free throw due to the foul. At this moment, it is revealed that Aomin already has 4 fouls. One more and he's out of the game, requiring his plays to be more cautious. After Kais' free throw basket, the Tuo team attempts to retaliate, but Ryota continues full force with a counterattack. The guy is insanely fast, but Aomin goes all out again and manages to defend before the basket is scored. He even mentions being underestimated because people thought he would hold back with the 4 fouls, making it clear he's still in the game. Kais remains unfazed and remarks he would be disappointed if it were otherwise. During the break after the third quarter, the Tuo coach tries to rethink strategies since the star player has 4 fouls. However, Aomin, confident, says they just need to pass the ball to him, and he'll handle the rest. Keijo High School is worried about Kais getting tired, but he asks them to trust him as he is still in condition to play until the end of the match. The final quarter begins and Aomin is still playing incredibly well. Right away, he scores a basket on his own, but Kais retaliates, making the score even. Aomin remains unstoppable, scoring more points, but Ryota continues making exactly the same plays, maintaining the score difference stable. At one point, he feels something in his leg but still scores the basket. Aida notices that all players are getting exhausted, and Hyuba comments that Keijo is in trouble because the score maintains an average difference of 10 points, and it will be difficult to turn things around in the last moments of the game. Aomin acknowledges that Ryota is doing very well and realizes that his gaze is similar to Kuroko's, though he doesn't agree. The other 2 players are already dispersed due to fatigue, and Kais takes advantage of an opening to try to decide the game with only 1 minute left. Teppei realizes that this moment is crucial for the game. If Kai scores, there might still be time for the Kaijo team to score 2 more 3-pointers to boost the team's morale, but if he misses, there won't be time for anything. Ryota faces Aomin, and this is the climax of the game. Aomin tries to read his movements to guess what he will do. He tries to think about what he would do in his place, but since both know these plays, it's challenging to anticipate. Suddenly, Aomin notices something and Kuroko sees it too. Instead of trying to surpass, Kais jumps and Aomin jumps with him, but higher. At the last moment, Kais pulls the ball back in an attempt to pass to his teammate, but Aomin quickly blocks the play in an impressive way. Thus, Keijo loses the best chance to turn the game around. Aomin explains that Ryota's mistake was trying to pass the ball because at the moment he looked at his teammate, Aomin realized he would fake a shot to make a pass. If it were him, he wouldn't look anywhere while faking a play because it doesn't depend on teammates and teamwork. Kais is already without hope, but his teammates show that the game is not over yet. However, they can't score. The Tuo team is still playing with everything in the last seconds. In Aomin's final play, Kais reaches him to prevent the dunk because he doesn't want to lose by giving up, but by not being strong enough. In a strength contest between the 2 in the air, Aomin dominates the opponent and finishes the play. The game finally ends with Tuo Academy winning 110-98. During the team's handshake, Kais can barely stand with his legs failing, but the team captain helps him get up and move forward. After the game in the locker room, the Tuo players comment that Aomin has already left, and one of them says he felt fear in this game, but that Aomin didn't use all his ability. This guy mentions he has seen him give his best and that he still has a trump card, but he couldn't play like that for long. As the Kaijo team leaves, we see the captain staying behind, saddened by the weight of the defeat. Meanwhile, the Siren team reflects on what just happened, fearing having to face these guys in the next competition, but still motivated for the Winter Cup. At that moment, Aida stands up and calls them to continue training. If they could, they would watch the next game because they would still see other members of the Generation of Miracles in action, but they can't afford to waste time at the moment. On the way, they pass by a tall guy with purple hair. Even Kagami is impressed by the height, assuming he's over 2 meters. When the guy passes them, Tetsuya seems to recognize the person. Later, Kagami finds Kuroko practicing on a court, at least trying. He asks about the other members of the Generation of Miracles, and Kuroko responds that he only knows how they were in middle school. Still, since Kais, Aomin, and Midorima have improved a lot since then, the other 2, Murasakibara and Akashi, must have improved as well. Kuroko concludes by saying he has no idea how they are now, but declares that he will defeat them all until none are left. The season ends with Taiga running, and Kuroko throws the ball to him to finish with an alley-oop. After losing in the intercollegiate competition, the high school basketball team prepares for the next competition. Despite their focus on teamwork, everyone realizes that what the team lacked was the individual development of each player to perform even better as a unit. They aim to fulfill the promise of defeating the former members of the miraculous generation. In a restaurant, the Siren High School team is having a meal when Kagami Taiga attempts to eat broccoli with his left hand, letting it slip. He is trying to improve his skills with his left hand, as it will help when jumping off his right leg. Newcomers to the team, Koki Furihara, Koichi Kawahara, and Hiroshi Fukuda, discuss their day off the next day and consider playing street basketball at an event. However, Coach Riko Ada insists on resting. Despite this, they complain about not playing much, and it's true. In the first season, they only played a couple of times and only in friendly matches or training sessions. Teppei Kiyoshi intervenes for them, and Ida agrees to let only the newcomers play. This includes Taiga and Kuroko, who are also first-year students. However, Teppei shows up the next day because Kawahara is sick. At the event location, they coincidentally encounter Tsukawa and other players from Seiho High School, the team they defeated in the intercollegiate competition. They decide to eat together, and the Seiho team mentions that they won't participate in the Winter Cup because only the top 8 teams from the intercollegiate qualifiers can join. From their block, only Siren and Shotoku High School qualified, and Seiho was left out for losing to Siren. However, they hope for a rematch in this street event. Unfortunately, Seiho is quickly defeated in the first game, and Taiga recognizes a guy from the opposing team. He wears a ring hanging on a necklace, just like Taiga's, and introduces himself as Tatsuya Himuro. The guy also recognizes Kagami and starts speaking in English. Teppei asks in English if the guy is Taiga's friend, but he responds in Japanese, saying he can speak the language, probably just showing off his bilingualism unnecessarily. In a flashback, we see Taiga and Himuro's past in the United States. Himuro taught Kagami to play basketball as a way to socialize. The boy also said that one must hate losing to play well. After Taiga learns to play and makes new friends, he tells Himuro they are like brothers. So the boy buys 2 rings from a street vendor to represent their brotherhood, deciding to make necklaces so it doesn't interfere with basketball. Years later, when Taiga is called to play a street team against another with a strong player, he faces his brother and wins. They alternate wins and losses until they tie at 49-49. Before the tiebreaker, Himuro tells Kagami that if he loses, he won't be his brother anymore, as he doesn't want to be the older brother who loses to the younger one. During the game, Taiga notices the guy's movements are not normal and sees that his arm is bandaged. This causes Kagami to hesitate when about to secure victory, making Himuro furious and prompting a second bet. Himuro says that if Taiga loses the next game, he will give up the ring there. Unfortunately, there was no next game because Taiga had to return to Japan. In the present, the guy reveals he also returned to Japan and is now at Yosen High School, so the promise will finally be fulfilled. When Taiga hesitates, Kuroko uses the group's mascot puppy to get his attention, saying he understands the guy but shouldn't go easy on someone who loves the sport. With this, Kagami is more willing to play against his friend. Suddenly, Himuro asks who Tatsuya is, as he hadn't noticed him before. Kuroko introduces himself and Himuro recognizes the name. As the game is about to begin, a guy with purple hair appears, placing candy on the ball. His name is Murasaki Bara at Sushi, and Kuroko recognizes him. When the guy runs his hand through Kuroko's hair, he gets angry. Taiga then realizes that he is the pivot of the miraculous generation. Recognizing that Yosen High School was in the intercollegiate, the other players ask if he played in the last games of the tournament. He says that a guy named Akashi told him not to play, and Tatsuya reveals that Akashi was the captain of the miraculous generation. Finally, Murasaki Bara tells Himuro that they can't play unofficial matches, so they start to leave. However, Kagami stops him as he wants to have a match with his brother. Murasaki Bara seems somewhat absent-minded and tears a bit of Taiga's eyebrow. The newcomers notice he's a bit eccentric, but Kuroko explains that he's one of those guys who is great at something but terrible at everything else. He adds that on the court, the guy is invincible. Knowing that Murasaki Bara has the personality of a child, Taiga calls him a coward for avoiding the game, and surprisingly, the strategy works well. The game begins and the Siren team takes the ball. Kuroko quickly makes an ignition pass to Teppei, who finishes with a dunk, scoring the first basket of the game. On a return with the ball, Himuro faces Kagami and makes a high shot that goes through his defense and scores. At this moment, it starts to lightly rain. Tetsuya asks for the ball from Hiroshi and then passes it to Taiga, who arrives on the other side facing Atsushi. However, the rain intensifies and the game is suspended before the showdown between the two. Kagami still wanted to play with Tetsuya, but he says it would be dangerous to play with the risk of slipping. He demonstrates a technique Taiga is unfamiliar with, telling him to defend however he wants. He makes a basic shot, and even jumping at the same height, Kagami can't defend. The ball seems to pass through his hand, leaving the guy impressed. They'll have to leave the outcome of the contest to be determined in the Winter Cup. Before the Osen team left, Atsushi once again messes with Kuroko's hair. Kuroko tells him to stop and asks if he finds basketball boring. The guy responds arrogantly, typical of the generation of miracles, saying one just needs to be good at the sport, and that's it. Back at school, they encounter Momoi, the girl who likes Tetsuya, but attends a different school. She reveals that Almin, from the generation of miracles, didn't participate in the inter-high semifinals and finals due to an injury sustained during a game against Kaisa's Keijo team. Ada theorizes it was because of the Keijo game, and Kuroko explains that the weakness of the generation of miracles members is their excessive talent. Their bodies are still developing and can't handle the strain and pressure exerted by their talent. Momoi shares that Almin got upset when she suggested to the coach not to let him play in some games for his own good. He didn't understand it was for his benefit, and during an argument, she was rude to him and walked away. Kagami questions why she cares since she likes Kuroko, but Momoi explains it's a different kind of relationship and she doesn't want to be hated by her childhood friend. This makes her cry, and the other players, including Tetsuya, reprimand Taiga for his attitude. Kuroko reassures Momoi that Almin won't hate her for this, and he's probably looking for her right now. Hyuga, the team captain, tells Kagami to learn from the guy. Sometime later, it's the day of the first game, and Ada explains the Winter Cup format. 8 schools enter the qualifiers, but only 2 will play in the cup. On the first day, 4 schools will be eliminated, and the remaining 4 will enter a group stage, with the top 2 advancing to the cup. Their first game is against Jersey High School. As the team steps onto the court, Teppei is seen smiling. Asked by Shun Hazuki, he explains it's been a while since he played, so he can't help but smile. Kagami wonders if he'll be too distracted, but Tetsuya is confident. Jersey's players recognize Teppei as a member of a strong junior high team, although not as good as the generation of miracles. The game begins and Siren advances first, but the opponents heavily mark Kagami and he loses the ball. Seeing Taiga's frustration, Teppei appears and tells him to stay calm. After some baskets from both teams, the match is still balanced. When Teppei is in action, he faces Narumi, the opponent's rookie, and tricks him with an unpredictable pass, allowing Hyuga to score another basket. In the next play, when Narumi expects another pass, Teppei shoots from there, scoring again. In the stands, Shoichi Imayoshi from Tuo explains to a colleague that Teppei is his center posing as a point guard. His large hands let him hold the ball longer, deciding plays slightly after the opponent's movements, making it impossible to predict. Narumi attempts a counterattack, but Kiyoshi shows strong defense. In the next attack, Taiga goes for one of his famous dunks, but he jumps so high that he hits his head on the rim. Despite that, Siren finishes the first half with an 11-point lead. In the fourth quarter, Siren is even further ahead. With Teppei and the team, they perform well in rebounds, and the team is more stable between defense and offense. Taiga, with determination, advances to score in this game. He finally breaks through the defense because he notices the opponents have lost hope in the game. Only Narumi tries to stop him, but it's not enough. Taiga makes another impressive jump, leaping from the free throw line. At that moment, the members of the Generation of Miracles notice something all at the same time, each in their place. For the past few years, they were the best, but now a new basketball monster is emerging. Kagami scores the basket but falls. At least he scored. Kuroko helps his teammate up, and the game ends with Siren winning 108-61. After the game, Tetsuya asks Kagami for help testing his new technique. On the court, Kagami plays defense and Kuroko prepares to advance. Surprisingly, he passes through like a ghost, and Taiga knows that if he perfects this technique, he will be unbeatable. However, despite Tetsuya passing through, the ball remains. But looking closely, Taiga notices that the ball's leather is very smooth and worn out, and to have done this since summer, he must have used the ball a lot. At that moment, Kuroko mentions he needs a new ball, and this is already the 6th one that ended up like this. The first group stage game is against Senshinkan High School, whom they have lost to in the summer. This time, Siren manages to defeat them 78-61. Before the second game, Kiyoshi stays behind while the rest of the team goes to the court. He stops to talk to another guy who was in the shade nearby. On the court, Taiga comments that he saw what happened, so Kyuba explains that during junior high, the Generation of Miracles from Teika was unstoppable, but there was a team that could rival them. Including Kiyoshi, the team was called the 5 Uncrowned Generals. That guy was also one of them, named Makoto Hanamiya. Teppei talks to him, saying he saw him during the game when he should have been in his own team's match. But Makoto is calm because if he had played the first game, it wouldn't have been fun, and now their team's future victories are guaranteed. When one of the newcomers asks if they are friends, Hyuga says it's the opposite. Kiyoshi is the most honest player, while Makoto is the most dishonest. Before leaving, the guy talks about Teppei's injuries, saying he's worried and wants him to get better soon. The second game is against Shotoku High School. Player Takao tells Tetsuya that Shintaro Midorima will now face Teiga as a true rival, and not only that, the other players are also motivated, but this only makes Kuroko more excited. Ida, on the bench, mentions that to win, they need to neutralize Midorima. She thinks there's a limit to the number of super shots he can make, as she noticed in the previous game that he needs more preparation time for each shot. So if they can't block him, the team will have to pressure him to make mistakes. The game starts with both teams giving their all. When Midorima has the chance, he attempts one of his shots, but Kagami blocks it. He tries again, and Teiga continues to block with his impressive jumps. However, Midorima remains unfazed, telling them not to underestimate him. After several plays, even though Seiren has the advantage, they are a bit tense. Midorima notices Kagami starting to tire. Izuki also sees that Takao is keeping an eye on Kuroko's plays, limiting his ability to make as many invisible passes as before. When the ball reaches Midorima, he fakes a shot to trick Teiga and moves forward to make a real shot. However, Kagami jumps again immediately, narrowly deflecting the ball. When they realize that Midorima indeed missed the basket and the ball is still in play, Takao realizes that Tetsuya took the opportunity to run, and from the back, he sends the ball to the other side of the court, where Izuki finishes with a basket. In another play, Midorima pretends to shoot, attracting Kagami and Teppei, allowing him to pass the ball for a team attack with Seiren's defense weakened. Everyone is impressed because Midorima would normally be too arrogant to make such a play. Seiren now needs a plan to contain the opponents, so Teppei suggests putting Kuroko on the bench since his distraction isn't proving effective, and in the end, he becomes a burden to the team in this game, so keeping him on the court is useless. But did you really need to say all that? Imai felt sorry for the kid. Rinosuke Matove, a second-year player, replaces him. As Kiyoshi and Teiga are marking Midorima, the defense is lacking. The strategy is to continue marking to not lose the scoring advantage. In the third quarter, Takao makes a surprise pass to Midorima, who makes a shot without anyone to stop him, and Shotoku High School takes the lead. The rest of the team also proves to be strong at this moment and continues scoring. After much effort, Kagami starts to feel his legs shaky, and the coach notices. Ryota Kais, who is watching the game, comments that it will be tough for Seiren if they don't put Tetsuya back in. And that's exactly what Seiren does. One player thinks they are desperate for doing this, but Midorima knows that Tetsuya must have a trick up his sleeve. As the game proceeds, Takao marks Kuroko tightly, but Ida is confident in his new technique. Quickly, Tetsuya swaps marking with Kagami and runs towards Midorima. When Keishi makes a pass, he holds onto the ball instead of passing it immediately. Midorima finds it strange because the distraction doesn't work when the guy has the ball. However, in a split second, Kuroko passes without him noticing and quickly sends the ball to Kiyoshi, who finishes with a basket. The Shotoku counterattack fails, and Izuki passes the ball to Tetsuya, who uses the same technique against Takao, and Hyuga finishes this time. Furthermore, Kuroko's absence helps block the opponent's passes, allowing Seiren to tie the game again. In the last quarter, a player tries to predict Seiren's plays and strategies to block a pass, but Kuroko appears out of nowhere again and deflects the ball to Teiga, who jumps even facing a double block and does everything he can to finish with a dunk, turning the score in the game. Still, the Shotoku team does not disappoint, quickly catching up in the score, and the game remains intense until the last seconds. Takao tries to stop Tetsuya again, but he seems like a ghost with this technique. The guy is unstoppable. Teppei receives the ball and tries to finish with a dunk, but Midorima appears to stop him, committing a foul that gives Seiren 2 free throws with 2 seconds left in the game. In the first shot, Kiyoshi manages to score, leaving the score at 104-104. In the second throw, he seems to be on the edge. The ball follows its trajectory, while everyone around is tense. Even I won't lie. Unfortunately, it hits the rim and bounces back, and the Shotoku team tries to take advantage of the rebound, but Kagami grabs the ball first. However, Midorima is also there to block. As the ball slips away, the game ends in a tie, leaving everyone surprised. The showdown between Midorima and Kagami is still unresolved, but they trust that they will face each other again soon in this Winter Cup. After the game, Hyuga talks to Teppei about still being injured and how it made him miss the last shot. The captain tells him not to play the next game, but Kiyoshi wants to face Makoto at any cost, and Kagami overhears the conversation. Later, he questions Hyuga about what he heard, and the captain explains. We then see a flashback to the basketball club in the previous year. The Seirin school newly opened, Teppei, Izuki, Kokone, Mitove, and finally Hyuga, all shouting from the rooftop to the rest of the school that they will become the best in Japan this year. Afterward, they get a scolding from the director for the mess. Riko Ada, who was listening from below, bursts into laughter but decides to help as the club organizer since until then, she had no motivation for basketball due to the miraculous generation dominating everything in middle school. Soon she sets up a regimen for the team and rigorous training. The boys decide that Hyuga should be the captain because of his leadership skills. They participate in the inter-high qualifiers and defeat Shitoku High School at a time when they didn't have Midorime yet. However, Teppei begins to notice something in his legs. Reaching the end of the qualifiers, Seirin faces Karasaki Daiichi High School, dominating the entire match. However, Kiyoshi is feeling the leg problem even more. In the last moments of the fourth quarter, Makoto is put into play. He seems like an ordinary player but manipulates the team after understanding what is happening with Teppei. At one point, he signals and another player ends up forcing Kiyoshi's leg, drawing a foul and making him fall. Hyuga confronts Makoto for not going for the rebound and for making that signal, but Makoto says he has no proof. Teppei is taken off the court on a stretcher. Even without the best center, Seirin manages to hold on to victory by a narrow margin. Unfortunately, Hyuga realizes he won't be able to continue playing. Kiyoshi then explains that with surgery and physiotherapy, he will recover by the end of high school, but with only physiotherapy, he can return to play in about a year. He chooses the second option, but the problem is that with just physiotherapy, basketball will end up being harmful to his leg, and he won't be able to play for a long time when he returns. Hyuga knows his friend's determination and already imagines that he will do everything to play as much as possible in high school, so he uses speech determining that they will be the best in Japan the following year. After that, without Teppei, the Seirin team was crushed by the three kings of Tokyo in the group stage. After telling his whole story, Hyuga says that this will be the last year he can play with Teppei, and he doesn't want to regret it. The next day, they finally face Karasaki Daiichi High School again and start with a lot of pressure on the opponents. In the early plays, Tetsuya takes the ball and makes his invisible drive against one of the opponents, passing the ball to Kiyoshi to score the first basket of the game. Even Daichi Aomin in the stands is impressed with his new technique. As the game progresses, the Karasaki players start putting violent pressure, not caring about possible fouls or injuries. However, they take advantage of the referee's blind spot to avoid getting caught. Kagami gets irritated and tries to attack one of the opponents, but Kuroko stops him, saying that doing so will only harm their team. He is also annoyed, but says they should settle it in basketball. On the bench, Hyuga already has an injured arm, and Teppei asks Kagami to stay out of the paint. He wants to deal with the heavier attacks alone. Ada scolds him, but he just doesn't want his friends to get hurt and is firm in that decision. Despite all the attacks, Kiyoshi remains strong playing in the paint, but Hyuga becomes very frustrated with the opponent's conduct and demands the ball. He realizes that one of the guys usually blocks the referee's view to let the others do whatever they want. Hyuga's idea is to try a good performance in shooting to ease Teppei's marking, but the pressure makes him miss. Noticing Kiyoshi's resilience, Makoto signals again and one of his teammates cruelly throws himself on Kiyoshi, hitting him in the face. Hyuga scolds Makoto again, but he pretends not to understand once more. Even after this blow, Kiyoshi manages to get up, saying he will continue to protect his teammates. At halftime, Ada realizes how injured Kiyoshi is but remembers that he asked not to be substituted or he would hate her forever. Meanwhile, Kagami is so frustrated that he almost doesn't notice, but he sees Tetsuya's face and for the first time in the anime, he looks angry. In the third quarter, a guy with bangs starts marking Kuroko, thinking that he uses the invisible drive when the opponent blinks, so his bangs are protection against this technique. However, when another player tries to steal the ball, Tetsuya uses the technique, passing through both at the same time, then he tosses the ball up where Kagami jumps over him and finishes the play. When one of the opponents asks if he only passes when someone blinks, Kuroko has no idea what he's talking about. After that, he is substituted for Kogane. After a guy named Sigo enters the court, Makoto starts stealing the ball in every Seirin pass, apparently using this strategy because dirty play didn't work, so they are using Makoto and Seto's intelligence to predict the other team's plays. On the bench, Tetsuya suggests a change. He says he wants to stop playing as a team, and everyone is surprised. In the fourth quarter, Izuki makes an unexpected pass that Makoto doesn't understand. Kuroko appears out of nowhere and passes to Kagami up front, who finishes the play. Everyone from Karasaki is impressed that Makoto didn't predict this play, but it turns out that neither Izuki nor Kagami knew what Kuroko was going to do. Usually, he makes plays that the team already knows, although unpredictable for opponents, but this time he acted without any pattern known by his teammates, so Makoto couldn't predict it. In the bleachers, Almin explains to the other players that Taiga simply went there and scored even without knowing the play because when you play every day with Kuroko, you begin to understand how he thinks. It doesn't require logic, just trust. Tatsuya continues with his incredible and illogical passes, but the team still needs to recover the difference. Unfortunately, the opponents return to playing dirty against Teppei, so Ida is forced to take him out, saying that if the same thing happens as the previous year, she prefers him to hate her. Hyuga also intervenes, saying to trust the team, so Mitobe takes his place. Kuroko remains as unpredictable as ever, but unfortunately, Hyuga is not able to score 3-pointers. He hasn't scored any in this game yet. At this moment, the captain finally realizes that he is too focused on beating Makoto in this game, but that wasn't the promise he made to Teppei. The agreement was to become the best team in Japan. Now, with all the confidence restored, Hyuga makes the first precise shot of the game and scores a 3-pointer. But that's not all. In the next play, he takes advantage of Kuroko's unpredictability to set up another shot, also allowing Mitobe to score. With a few seconds left in the game, the Siren team continues scoring one basket after another, ending with a shot from Hyuga. They win 76-70, causing a general celebration. Siren High School is finally qualified for the Winter Cup. Watching all this, even Ada starts to cry. Makoto pretends to apologize, but just keeps saying that he will crush them in the next match, that they will regret it, and all the typical anime villain talk. However, Teppei praises the last shot he made and even says he would like to play with him again, which only makes Makoto more irritated with a kindness. While relaxing before the cup, the Siren team coincidentally meets the Tuo team in the hot springs. Almin goes to Kuroko, and they talk about his technique. When Daiki is about to boast that Tuo will win the cup, Taiga appears to interrupt him, but he says Kagami doesn't even come close to the Generation of Miracles. In the sauna, the other Tuo players reveal that it wasn't really a coincidence they met there. In fact, they wanted to inform that they already have information about the Cup Games and Siren's first opponent will be Tuo Academy. Despite the news, they are more excited than worried. After all, to win the Cup, they would probably have to face Tuo at some point, so it's good to face them early. Leaving the hot springs, Kuroko realizes that Taiga is not with the group and Ada informs that from now on they will train a bit without him. They go to a location to start training, and this time Ida's father, Mr. Kagetora, appears to help. First, he asks them to take off their shirts for a physical assessment. Then he divides them into two groups and instructs them to play cops and robbers in the mountains, and the losers will have to work even harder on leg training. Ada acknowledges that this is a training to strengthen the whole body while moving in difficult terrain. After that, on a court, Mr. Kagetora explains that to have good teamwork, they also need to be individually skilled like Tuo High School. He used some shooting tips to Hyuga, saying that sometimes he tries to dribble when he should shoot because that's his specialty. The coach demonstrates, while Teppei mentions that he played on the Japanese national team. Mr. Kagetora concludes that everyone needs to develop their individual skills. They have 1 month until the Winter Cup starts, and he will train them as much as possible until then. As for Kagami, we see that he's taking a flight back to the United States. When Ada tells the team this, she also explains that in Los Angeles, Taiga has a mentor who taught him how to play basketball. After training for a month, the first day of the Winter Cup arrives. Before the games begin, Kuroko receives a message and asks to leave. He explains that Akashi, the former captain of the Generation of Miracles, is calling him. Since Siren's first game will be in the afternoon, Ada lets him go but asks Furihata to go with him. When they arrive at the designated location, Furihata is impressed because all the other members of the Generation of Miracles are there. Despite the seemingly heavy atmosphere, the former teammates chat normally like friends. However, they complain that Akashi, who called them all, hasn't arrived yet, but it doesn't take long for him to appear. He has red hair and wears the Rakuzen High School jacket. First, he says he wants to talk only with his old teammates, so we see that not only Furihata is left out, but Kagami has just arrived in Japan as well. As no one leaves, Akashi borrows scissors from Midorima. These scissors are the lucky charm of the day. Midorima is somewhat superstitious. He says he just wants to cut a bit of his own hair, but shortly afterward, he approaches Kagami and makes a sudden movement, which Taiga avoids but ends up with a small cut on his face. This is disturbing, but Akashi says that since he has good skills, he will forgive him for staying there. After cutting part of his bangs, he bids farewell to his former teammates, saying that he just wanted to greet them but also wanted to check something he noticed just by looking at their faces, that no one has forgotten a certain promise. When the match between Siren and Tuo is about to begin, Mr. Kagetora shows up to watch. He recognizes Tuo's coach, and not only that, Shotoku's coach is right beside him and recognizes him too. They seem like friends. Kagetora explains that he came to watch his apprentices from Saren, whom he trained for a month. When asked by his colleague, he mentions that he is no longer a coach and his daughter is doing a good job. Right at the beginning of the match, the Saren team advances aggressively but loses the ball to a 2-0 player who passes to Elmin to finish with an alley-oop. However, this doesn't surprise anyone. The team remains focused and Kuroko prepares an ignition pass, but this time it's improved. Elmin gets ready to block the pass, but Tetsuya pushes the ball while spinning his hand, creating such a powerful acceleration that the ball hits Elmin's hand and goes straight to Kiyoshi on the head. He jumps for the basket, but another player quickly catches up, even touching the ball. However, Kiyoshi makes an unexpected pass backward, where Kagami appears to finish with a dunk. In another play, Kagami faces Elmin head-on. He tries to figure out a way to get past him, but realizes he won't win in a one-on-one, so he passes the ball. When Yuta faces a 2-0 rookie named Sakurai, he shows his new skill, similar to what the coach demonstrated a month ago. Kuka seems to be farther away than the player expected and makes an undefendable shot from a distance, scoring a 3-pointer. Later, they face each other again, and Hyuben does the same thing. Sakurai is frustrated but determined to show what he can do. During 2-0's attack, he takes a 3-point shot, demonstrating high speed. Sakurai claims he's better than Hyuga, irritating the captain, who tells Izuki to keep passing to him. The match continues with both teams scoring alternating baskets non-stop. Kai's comments to his teammates that this 3-point shooting contest is getting boring. To Saren's dismay, 2-0 is leading in points and the first half is coming to an end, but Kuroko helps even the score when he receives a pass. He uses the advanced technique and passes the ball to Hyuga, who scores another basket, tying the game. In the stands, Takao talks to his teammates about Tetsuya's disappearing act with the ball. He explains that it doesn't work if Kuroko is alone. Furthermore, he can move diagonally to an angle where the opponent's eye can't easily follow. Meanwhile, Momoi explains to the 2-0 team that Tetsuya needs Kagami to use this technique. As the ball is the most prominent presence on the court, it's hard to lose sight of Kuroko when he has the ball. Still, Kagami also has a strong presence, especially being a great player, so taking advantage of Kagami's presence in the opponent's field of view, Kuroko can disappear in plain sight, even with the ball in hand. In the second half, Elmin steps up to mark Kuroko when he tries to use the disappearance, and this time, he manages to keep up because he had his eyes closed. Next, when Tetsuya attempts the improved ignition pass, Elmin stays in front, extending his hand to stop the ball, allowing 2 to score with an advantage. Consequently, Kuroko is substituted. Kagami, on the other hand, continues passing while facing Elmin, and Kiyoshi, in a better position, scores Saren's next basket. When it comes to defense, Taiga changes his approach, and the Miracle Generation members notice. As Elmin approaches, Kagami almost steals the ball, but during his jump, something different happens. We see a flashback of Aida talking to her father, who mentions that Taiga has the same potential as the Miracle Generation. Still, when he relies on Kuroko to play, he limits himself. So when he can face someone alone, it might be enough to defeat one of the former Teiko players. And it turns out to be true. Taiga appears behind Elmin, managing to take the ball from him at the last moment, impressing everyone. Ada herself realizes that Kuroko's defeat motivated Taiga enough to achieve this feat. However, the happiness doesn't last long because Elmin says he can now play more seriously. Right after that, he executes a new move by bouncing the ball in a way that looks like an alley-oop pass, but he moves extremely quickly, reaching the key in time to steal the ball from his teammate and even score a basket from behind without looking. After that, there are more clashes between the two, and it's evident that Taiga is on the same level as Elmin. However, the opponent doesn't seem to lose confidence, as if he still has much more to show, and we know that in Anime, everyone always has an ace up their sleeve. At halftime, Elmin separates from the team, and on the way to the locker room, Imayoshi comments to the others that he's playing the best he can but hasn't shown all of his cards yet, it may say so. In the third quarter, Kuroko returns to the court and is performing well. However, Imayoshi accomplishes an unbelievable feat. He manages to mark Tetsuya, something only Shotoku's Takao could do until now. At this moment, it's revealed that in the bathroom, Momoi explained how to do it. She said that anyone who looks directly at Kuroko becomes an easy target for distraction. Still, the issue is that Tetsuya always makes eye contact with the player he's going to pass to, so they are always in their line of sight. Therefore, it's Kuroko's own teammates who reveal his movements, allowing them to use them as a mirror to keep locating Kuroko without losing the mark. As Kuroko's techniques always rely on this lack of presence, he's completely neutralized with this strategy. Moreover, the other players are also doing their part to block Saren's strategies. Even Sakurai is managing to prevent Hyuga's shots, and Elmin is always going head-to-head with Taiga both on the ground and in the air, executing incredible maneuvers in the finishing. The score difference keeps increasing, and the Keijo High School folks realize that Tuo's other players are also keeping an eye on Kuroko. In other words, his distraction has completely worn out. Despite the adversities, Tetsuya remains confident that they will win this game, and the rest of the team shares the same conviction. The Tuo team is skeptical, and Aimeyoshi comments that Kuroko has lost his distraction, and there's nothing more they can do. However, Izuki reveals that it wasn't exactly that, they actually made him lose the distraction. Suddenly, after catching a glimpse of Kuroko, Izuki disappears right in front of Aimeyoshi and makes an impressive basket, leaving everyone in awe. Ida, on the other hand, is aware of what happened. This is Kuroko's final trump card, the overflowing distraction technique. In the next play, Hyuga steals the ball from the other team's careless pass and maneuvers past Sakurai in the same way Izuki did. Aimeyoshi is baffled. It seems like everyone is using Tetsuya's technique. In a flashback, we see that during halftime, Kuroko convinced the others to let him play in the last quarter, even if the distraction ends before the game's conclusion. This way, he becomes more noticeable on the court, making it easier for the players to pay attention to him, essentially taking Montega's role when it's Kuroko with the ball. Afterwards, they combine this technique with Hyuga's to make one of their shots. Even Kagami is aided by this technique against Aomine, who is left with nothing to do when Kagami advances. Despite this turnaround, the Tuo team continues to score, and the score difference doesn't decrease. After the halfway mark of the fourth quarter, Teppei, Kuroko, and Tega start marking Aomine, but he still manages to pass the first two, and the last block from Teppei isn't enough. However, it's revealed that this strategy was coordinated. Tetsuya sought help from the other two to stop Aomine. Even when Kagami appears from behind to block, Aomine makes a side throw, but something unprecedented happens. This guy misses the basket for the first time, hitting the rim. Kuroko's plan was precisely this, using the ability to distract Aomine from the basket, preventing him from scoring, as he would already be at his limit with the marking of the other two. Next, when Hyuga attempts a shot, Sakurai exerts too much effort and ends up committing a foul, giving Hyuga 3 free throws. He apologizes to Aomine, who just tells him to prepare himself and reflects on when he started yawning on game days, always being sure he would win. All this time, he just wanted a challenge, a moment when he didn't know if he would win or lose. At this moment, he thanks Kuroko while breaking into a smile. Hyuga makes all 3 throws, reducing the score difference to 3 points. However, when Aomine receives the ball, he passes Kagami without him even noticing and quickly reaches the other side of the court to score immediately after. After that, Aomine becomes invincible, incredibly fast, and scoring non-stop despite Siren's counterattacks. Fortunately, after all this, Kagami has his moment of glory. In a breathtaking scene, Tega enters the same state as Aomine and manages to steal the ball from him. The two engage in a fierce competition. The movements are so fast that it's hard to keep up. They traverse the court in an instant, and when another player, in this case Sakurai, grabs the ball, he quickly passes it to Aomine, and the competition continues. None of them falters in attack or defense, and the teams go without scoring for a minute. The other members of the miraculous generation define this state as the zone. A player who enters this zone exceeds their limits and can fully utilize their abilities with maximum speed, strength, and even game vision. Thus, none of the other players on the court could interfere, especially since Aomine is too fast and Kagami's jumps are too high. With both of them at their peak, no one could attack or defend head-on. It would be too risky for either team. Momoi realizes that Aomine is only in this state because of Kagami's level, which forced him into it. Finally, he's enjoying himself on the court again. The competition is intense, but Kagami manages to score first, bringing the difference back to 3 points. Aimeyoshi, observing all this, realizes that Aomine is being surpassed due to a time limitation in the zone. Using 100% of the ability takes a toll on the body. But apparently, what keeps Kagami in this state for longer is the team's spirit. Thus, he also manages the first defense, allowing Saren to score another basket, trailing by just 1 point behind 2-0. Aimeyoshi is still confident in Aomine and passes to him, who this time wins the competition with Kagami by throwing himself sideways and making an unexpected move. There are only 15 seconds left in the game, and the Keijo players realize that Siren is already at their limit. They won't withstand an overtime if they score only a 3-point basket to tie, so they need 2 baskets. At this moment, Kais and the others start cheering for the Siren team. They attempt to counterattack with Hyuga trying to surpass Sakurai, even with Kuroko's help. They realize that the overflowing distraction no longer works, so the captain passes to Kagami, who tries to score, but Aomine grabs the ball with his hand, preventing the dunk. To avoid losing the ball, he passes to Teppei, who is reached by another player. However, he feigns a jump before attempting to score, allowing him to finish the play by dunking 2 points and even getting a free throw because the other player committed a foul. All the spectators cheer at this moment, and Ida recognizes that all of this was only possible thanks to Taiga's effort in training until now. In a dramatic scene, Kiyoshi prepares and takes the shot, but ends up missing. On the rebound, two players from Tuo try to counterattack, but Kagami goes beyond both the slam dunk. However, Almin also appears to block and again rejects the dunk, sending the ball to the other side of the court. Mayoshi runs as fast as he can to finish the counterattack, but suddenly he notices Kuroko passing. He passes the ball in time for an ignition pass back to Taiga, who jumps alongside Almin. This time it's all or nothing, and he finally defeats Almin in this aerial battle, slamming the last basket of the game, thus ending the match 101-100 for Saren. The celebration is widespread. Everyone from Saren is overjoyed, while Almin experiences defeat. Momoi starts to cry, Kuroko is nearly exhausted, and Almin appears reflective, but Kagami tells him to wipe that look off his face because they'll face each other again. Tetsuya, in turn, extends his arm with a closed fist, saying that Almin hasn't touched his hand since that day in junior high. Almin thinks it's nonsense, but Kuroko asks him to put himself in the shoes of the ignored. Almin accepts, saying it's the last time, and that he'll win next time. After this first game, the Siren team decides where to go as it's already night. Kovene suggests celebrating the victory, and Ada thinks it's a good idea for the group to go out for dinner. She lives a bit far, but Kagami mentions that he lives nearby. After dinner, Kuroko surprises Kagami on the balcony, appearing without him noticing. Kagami thanks Taiga and says he's happy to have met someone like him. Kagami is speechless, but says they need to prepare because the cup is just beginning. Kuroko says the only option is to get stronger. The next night, after watching a Shutoko game, Alexandra Garcia, Kagami and Himuro's master who came from the US to see her disciples play, calls Taiga for a conversation. She says the Generation of Miracles players are good, and since he already beat one of them, he has a chance against the others. However, the game against Yosen High School will not be easy because there's not just one Miracle player, there's also Tatsuya, who has improved a lot through Alexandra's training and is now the level of a Miracle player. She's willing to teach Taiga something he didn't know until now. Meanwhile, Kuroko meets Almin and asks him to teach him how to shoot. Ida reveals that he was already practicing this under her father's supervision and that it's something he needs to overcome as a weakness. Teppei explains that Kuroko's distraction depends on having someone to receive the ball. When everyone in the paint is marked, his invisibility loses its utility because he has nowhere to go with the ball. Ada adds that Tetsuya's shooting needs to improve for such situations because the invisible advance won't always work, as it happened against Almin, and the distraction overflow loses effectiveness if used again against the same team. When the day of the second cup game arrives, the Siren team starts the match without Kuroko and Kagami against Nakamiya South High School, and they begin losing. Fortunately, they regain focus when they start playing more seriously and turn the score around in the last quarter. It's one of the few times they did meet the main protagonists. Of course, not only Siren advances to the next stage, the other Generation of Miracles players also move forward. In the third game, they win by a narrow margin, while Yosen High School does something unbelievable in their third game, winning 87-0. When the match between Siren and Yosen begins in the quarterfinals, it's evident that Yosen's players are very tall, helping not only in the attack but mainly in defense, not allowing even Hayuba's shots. No wonder the opposing team couldn't score in the last game. In the second half, Siren continues without scoring. The opponent's defense is very strong, especially Murasaki Barrows. At one point, Teppei takes a shot that Atsushi knows he can block, but Kagami appears to try to finish it. However, the opponent's reflexes are too quick. Unable to slam dunk, Kagami passes to Kuroko, who prepares to shoot. It's shown that during the break, he asked to be allowed to make a shot. Atsushi moves forward to block, but Kuroko shows his most recent technique for the first time, a shot that rises quickly, with no time for defense, thus marking Siren's first basket in this game. In the stands, Almin tells Momoi that as Tetsuya improved his passes, he started shooting with the palm of his hand as if passing the ball to the basket. Almin helped with the posture, but the technique was developed by Kuroko himself. In the next play, he uses disappearance to advance against the defense. Atsushi and another player step forward to block, but Kuroko takes advantage to pass to Hyuba, who makes the final shot. However, Yosen's counterattack quickly balances the game. To better deal with Yosen's attack, Kagami changes his posture, have more mobility behind the big man, and at the crucial moment, he manages to block the attack. On the rebound, another player tries to block, but Teppei also does his part, so the ball quickly reaches Kuroko, who, when faced with Atsushi, makes another one of those shots, gradually reducing the difference for Saren. In the third quarter, Himuro Tatsuya shows why he is so feared. He faces Kagami and fakes a shot so well that Kagami jumps, but he takes advantage to advance and make the shot ahead, thus avoiding the defense. From the bench, Ida comments that his movements are so smooth and natural that it's impossible to telegraph, so in the shot, no one could do anything to stop it since they couldn't predict that he would shoot. In the next throw, Taiga manages to jump in time, but he can't block because the ball seems to pass through his hand like a mirage. Kagami recalls that this happened in the street game before. Before the end of the third quarter, without Kuroko and Kagami, Siren still struggles. However, Kiyoshi makes an unexpected shot, scoring a three-pointer like Hyuga. Himuro also scores, keeping the intense competition alive. Teppei continues to showcase his skills, playing as a playmaker. He passes to Izuki, who, even against Atsushi's defense, passes it back to Teppei for a dunk. This guy is truly versatile. On a bench, Taiga asks Kuroko for a favor to throw away the necklace with a ring that represents the brotherly relationship between him and Himuro. Taiga states that the obvious choice is between the past with him and the future with Kuroko. He then returns to the court and Kuroko remarks that nothing can defeat Taiga now. Facing Himuro, Kagami manages to block him after a feigned jump and advance, leading to a counterattack. On the other side, he encounters Atsushi again. Instead of shooting, Kagami makes an incredible jump, but it's not enough to surpass Murasakibara. Taiga ends up falling to the ground. This time, Atsushi is confused, trying to understand what Taiga was attempting. Later, when Izuki runs out of options and attempts a failed three-pointer, Kiyoshi appears to finish, but he falls on the rebound and is caught by Kuroko. The referee stops the game and Kiyoshi claims it was just a stumble. However, he is eager to continue playing, especially since they are closing the gap with a 7-point difference. Under this pressure, Murasakibara goes into a rage. Kuroko explains that despite his defensive stance, Murasakibara excels in offense. In such situations, he can score over 100 points in a game. 3 Saren players try to mark him simultaneously, but he moves angrily, disregarding the defense. He receives the ball, scores easily, using a move the team calls the Thor's Hammer. In the next play, he receives the ball and goes for the finish. Despite Kagami's attempts to stop him, Murasakibara dunks with such force that it shakes the basket structure. He declares that basketball favors the tall, making it impossible to enjoy. The structure collapses when he finishes, stating that ideals are nothing but garbage to him. Everyone is surprised, including the Yosen players, and the game is suspended for the structure replacement. When the match resumes, Teppei is replaced by Kuroko. Before going to the bench, he apologizes and asks Kuroko to win. Kuroko then tells Atsushi that he will win for Kiyoshi, but the big guy says he will crush the boy, which physically isn't that hard, let's be honest. The game resumes and Kuroko immediately uses his vanishing drive to advance. When he faces Atsushi, despite Himuro explaining Kuroko's shooting trajectory, Kuroko passes the ball before Atsushi can grab it. Taiga takes advantage, making another dunk. As Atsushi returns to position, Kuroko starts marking him, as strange as it may seem. The boy is so light and small that he's almost imperceptible to the opponent. When Atsushi receives the ball and turns back, he no longer sees Kuroko there. However, as he advances, he knocks down Kuroko, committing a foul. Kuroko used his lack of presence to create this situation. Afterward, Kuroko suggests using another defensive strategy. First, Hyuga makes a successful shot. Then during the counterattack, they switch to man-to-man defense, being faster, making it better when opponents return. At this moment, one of the players notices Kagami's marking but doesn't know how long he's been there. Only Himuro understands that they are constantly changing marks. This strategy helps Kuroko steal more balls by preventing passes. After this strategy, Izuki attempts a basket, celebrated by all but ultimately invalidated as the third quarter ends. Angry, Atsushi knocks over a bench and is scolded by the coach. To adapt to this playing style, she says they'll have to rely on Himuro to dribble past opponents because passes are impractical at this point. On the bench, Kiyoshi asks to play at least 2 minutes at the end of the game, even though he's not well. Ada agrees, but suddenly she stands, saying she needs a few minutes to do something. On the court, Siren starts the final quarter with a defense style similar to Yosen's, making an alley-oop when Kagami tries to stop Atsushi, but he manages to score. Himuro continues with fake plays to deceive opponents, and Kagami volunteers to stop him. He figured out the Mirage shot's trajectory. Himuro even releases the ball once before shooting again, but he executes the movement so well that it seems like the ball was launched in the first instant, which was just a decoy to hide the second shot. Thus, Taiga only needs to delay the block a bit to stop him. However, Himuro shows that he anticipated the opponent's understanding, shooting in the first moment to avoid Taiga's delayed block. Watching everything that's happening, Aomin comments that Taiga is trying to enter the zone, but it's harder to get in for the second time. After experiencing what you can do in the zone, you're left only with the desire to get back in there. But those are mundane thoughts, precisely what prevents a person from entering. In other words, to enter the zone, you can't try to enter. When Atsushi receives the next ball, he and Kagami engage in a dispute where Taiga makes a magnificent block. It's at this moment that he finally enters the zone again. Ida returns just in time to see him in action. Meanwhile, Himuro easily passes through triple coverage. When he attempts the Mirage shot, Taiga maintains the block from the first to the second attempt and steals the ball to quickly reach the other side and finish with a shot. After playing the ball, he even turns his back like Midorima. On the other hand, Atsushi tries to use Thor's hammer again, but Taiga uses tremendous force to stop this move, impressing Kais and Aomi in the stands. The big guy falls to the ground and Taiga jokes, apologizing for using too much force. Kuroko also plays his part using his incredible passes to further enhance Taiga's plays. When facing Himuro again, Taiga uses the Mirage ability against the user himself. In the final moments, as Atsushi jumps to defend, Taiga continues to rise while Murasakibara starts falling first, and then the basket is scored. After the Yosen team calls a timeout, Atsushi comes back with his hair tied, resembling a samurai. Siren recognizes that he's dangerous, but Hyuga is more concerned about how long Kagami can stay in the zone. Even with the samurai, the Yosen team can't stop Taiga in this zone state, scoring several consecutive baskets. Aomi remarks on the irony of the team focused on teamwork depending solely on Taiga, while Atsushi is working in tandem with the Yosen team in their attack, showing good performance with Himuro. With just 1 minute left in the game, the Yosen team still has a 4-point advantage, which is not much but still an advantage. In this final minute, Kiyoshi returns to play as promised. Meanwhile, Picture's captain comments that it's a decisive moment, needless to say, but he argues that if Yosen scores now, Siren won't have a chance to recover, so they need to focus on preventing Yosen's attack as much as possible. Teppei indeed does everything he can to stop Himuro's attack. Himuro attempts a Mirage shot, but Kiyoshi also makes a feint move, revealing that he decided to give up on blocking the second shot. It's at this moment that Hyuga appears, making an incredible block. The ball reaches Kagami, who, after all, manages to hit the rim, causing a rebound. However, Teppei and Hyuga step in to correct the play. In the next counterattack attempt by Atsushi, he and Kagami engage in an aerial strength contest. Kagami realizes that the opponent's strength is even greater, but Teppei comes to help, and together they overcome the big guy, sending the ball forward. However, Atsushi returns faster than the counterattack, and now everyone realizes that he has also entered the zone. It's a tense moment with only a few seconds left in the game. Kagami forces himself to surpass his limits for the most challenging jump so far. Instead of dunking, when Atsushi jumps to block, Kagami throws the ball with immense force, finally turning the game around. However, there are still 4 seconds left in the game, and Atsushi manages to return for the counterattack, but he can't jump anymore. Himuro realizes that after jumping so many times with his massive body, his knees can't take it anymore. With no other option, he still intends to shoot, but Kuroko arrives just in time to make the most unexpected block of this tournament. Finally, this match ends with Siren's victory of 73-72. They celebrate, the teams greet each other, and Himuro says that as agreed, he won't call Kagami his brother anymore. Teppei says they'll play again, but Murasakibara says he won't play basketball anymore. He never liked it, and now that he lost, there's no reason to continue playing. Despite this, Kuroko doesn't think it's true and says he doesn't really hate the sport. When Himuro tries to talk to him, the guy starts crying. Meanwhile, Momoi tells Aomin that to enter the zone, you have to love the sport, so it's truly surprising that Atsushi managed to do it. This second season ends with a conversation between Kuroko and Kagami, with Kuroko saying he's irritated and talking about Taiga's relationship with Himuro. He reveals that he didn't throw away the necklace with the ring because when he asked to do that, it didn't seem sincere. Alexandra also talks to Himuro, saying it was a good game and worth the trip. When Kuroko finishes talking to Taiga and asks if it's so difficult for them to continue being brothers and rivals at the same time, the guy grabs the necklace and runs to meet his friend. And that's how the second season ends. Hey folks, did you enjoy this anime? Drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and let me know in the comments if you'd be up for a third season of this anime on the channel. See you in the next one.